Jim Morrison, the lead singer for The Doors, a rock music group, is dead. He was 27.
But the death was kept secret to avoid a sensation.
They say natural causes.
Which natural causes in specific, he wasn't sure.
He was buried in Paris in the same cemetery where Balzac and other French immortals lie.
My name is Jeff Finn, and I'm a lifetime fan of Jim Morrison. I've made it my life's work to extract the real truth from a 50-year-old tale that's been riddled with rumor, lies, and myth.
Jim Morrison's social security number is still active in Rochester, New York, and I think that's like an hour away from where you are now.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's I've said numerous times, this is I guess Jim Morrison has been part of my personal trajectory my whole life. I'll be 58 years old in a few weeks in February.
No way.
So I've got that going for me, which is great. And all kidding aside, the Doors music is some of the earliest, as I say in the documentary, the earliest I recall absorbing as a young kid, along with the Beatles, some of the more psychedelic offerings, the Beatles. I remember hearing these songs, as obviously millions of people did, when I was just a young kid, growing up in Downers Grove, Illinois, shout out, and a suburb of Chicago. And I found it absolutely haunting, and as a young kid around the age of 5, I didn't know from Jim Morrison or the Doors. I think I knew who the Beatles were by name because everyone did, but I just remember hearing those songs, and they sounded like what I called Halloween music.
Yeah.
And it was just haunting. And to this day, I still get the same goosebumps. And I think my detective skills might have been taking root even then, but who's to say? Yeah, exactly. When I read, in fact, I have, give me a sec. Got the original right here. This is the copy that Robin Wordle later inscribed. I can show you that a little later if you'd like.
Sure.
I read that book. I read this book in one sitting when I was 18 years old in October of 1985. And I remember closing the book and literally saying under my breath, I was like, no fucking way. There's no way.
Yeah.
Morrison died when they say he died. It just didn't track for me. The puzzle pieces didn't add up then in 1985, and they sure as hell don't add up now, almost 39 years later. And so I never set out to have this become my life's work.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly that was the case, and I'm grateful for that. And yeah, I'm trying to, with my documentary, as I call it, I'm trying to bring a deeper understanding to Jim Morrison as a person, as opposed to the persona we have all absorbed, the rock star, the rock god. I'm asking people to, as Jim said, wake up and look deeper. Yeah, I mean, 100%. I thought to myself for years, for decades even, for decades, all throughout those years of my research, going back to 1985, I call it my DIY JDM research, for do-it-yourself James Douglas Morrison. And I thought all along, why the hell has no one stepped up to the plate and questioned this controlled narrative, And I find it honestly really sad, that the mainstream media, the masses, by and large, they took Bill Siddon's narrative that he put in place, upon his returning from Paris in 1971, as you said, claiming the sealed coffin and that Jim was dead. And everyone just took it at face value, like, okay, and no one questioned it. And so to this day, I get people, saying, he's dead, let it go, and I said, prove it. With all due respect, if that's what you believe, great, but I don't. And where's the definitive proof? I've had, as I've pointed out, I've had two attorneys, a former judge, and a forensic expert who was with the FBI tell me that the evidence, such as it is, would never hold up in a court of law. So it's a cold case. It's technically a cold case mystery that has yet to be solved. That's a great question. I believe so. Again, by and large, I think there's a comfort level there, which again, it's a tricky road. Like I want to respect people's their take on it, of course, but after 53 years, again, we go back to this controlled narrative, and I think people have a difficult time, reconciling what they have been told and informed all these years with the notion that holy shit, maybe maybe he really did, fake his death. Stranger things certainly have happened, and shockingly, I've learned in my own research that people fake their deaths like far more often than one would ever fathom. It's just not reported all the time. But there have been books written about it. I've read them, and it's for any number of reasons why someone would choose to do this. And clearly, Jim had every motive. I mean, just based on the Miami trial and the verdict alone, waiting for appeal, he was basically living as a fugitive in Paris. I mean, it's just been one protracted oh shit moment all down the line, honestly. I mean, it just raises the hair on the back of my neck. I get goosebumps on my arms, to this day. I mean, I'm learning more all the time, which is fascinating. And yeah, as as is in the trailer, it's in the new trailer, where a private investigator that I hired and worked with for the docu-mystery, her name is Cheryl Bombaugh.
Yeah, she's great.
She is vital to the process, and she went with me in my attempts to meet Mr. X. I shall say tactfully. And as again, as in the trailer, she discovered that Jim Morrison's social security number was still active just a few years ago when we shot that portion of the docuseries. And what's uncanny is that social security number of Morrison's was active in Rochester, New York, which is in the vicinity, shall we say, of where Mr. X has been known to dwell. So you can't make this stuff up. Well, that's ironic because I am the production company. I'm a one-man operation in the old school sense of true independent filmmaking. I don't have a crew. That's by and large why it took me so damn long to make the project. I'm one man working with hired freelancers. So, but yeah, early on in the process, I broke ground on it in July 2012, which seems like 100 years ago.
Mhm.
And initially I had planned for it to be, just a traditional standalone 90-minute or maybe 2-hour documentary. And over time it morphed and evolved and grew. At one point it was a 6-part doc. And as I've said many times, if I were to release all the footage, all the interviews, and all the B-roll, I mean, the thing could literally be a 24-hour docu-mystery. And there is talk of doing a possible limited edition DVD box set as the director's cut to get all that stuff out there to the fans. And I would love to do that. So we'll see how that plays out. Yeah, exactly. With respect to the traditional format of, the documentary, they're known as like talking head documentaries, not to be confused with the brilliant band Talking Heads. Where you get just people, one after the other, having their say. And I think that's brilliant. I mean, that was the original format. But with respect to Jim, in particular, and his times, the late 1960s, early 70s in general, I wanted to imbue the doc with, enliven it with color, not necessarily psychedelic, but just to give it that, that sense of a vivid, palette, and tribute to Jim and the universal mind, as he called it. I'm on the record with that. I've said many times, going back years, I think Oliver Stone is a brilliant filmmaker. I just don't feel that brilliance was on display in The Doors, 1991, the biopic. I think Kilmer did a great job with what he had to work with. I interviewed Randall Johnson in my documentary, who was the original screenwriter. It's been, written that he and Stone collaborated on that screenplay, but that wasn't really the case. Stone came along after Randall had already done all the research and written the screenplay, and then he sort of, morphed it. And that's to his credit. He was the director, and that's his prerogative. He can take poetic license and create what he wanted. But I just felt it was one-dimensional, as I know many people do. I just focused on nothing but the dark side, and frankly just made Jim look like a real asshole. And there was so much more to him than that. And his sister told me as much. So, teach their own. At the risk of sounding like an old dude, which I am, there's a couple of things here and there that I enjoy, but I've said this, this goes way back before I even began, my project. I just don't see, I know Jim was a 1 in a million, but there were many of his peers, who pushed the envelope back then, from Bob Dylan, John Lennon, Iggy Pop, Janis Joplin, Patti Smith, on and on. And where are those people today? And given the calamitous state of the world, I would think now more than ever, like, where are the people in their, young people in their early 20s or in their 20s, like, stepping up to protest, via art, via music. And surely they must be out there. Maybe I'm not aware of them, but, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, honestly, I might be the last person to give that advice, because I went about everything, just I don't want to say backwards or inside out, but it was a strange turn of events for me personally. Back at that time when I first read No One Here Gets Out Alive in 1985, I was 18, and I was a bit lost, as many 18-year-olds are. Like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? I knew I wanted to write. I knew that much. I've always been a writer. But I entertained the notion of attending Columbia College in Chicago, which is a great, liberal arts college. It didn't happen for one reason or the other. I think I was just too intimidated, as I recall. But I was interested in documentary film even then. But it took me a long, strange journey to get to this point. And honestly, I just dove in. Kind of like Tarantino, I guess, in that sense, not to put myself on his level in terms of talent. And obviously he doesn't do documentaries, but, the way he just dove in, he just did it, almost like punk rock, you just do it. Don't be afraid, as Jim said himself, back in the 60s regarding film, there really are no experts, and that could be argued now, 50 some years later. But yeah, my advice would be just, be fearless, just dive in and know you're going to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. There are always silver linings to mistakes if you have the the patience and the drive to look for them, you know. So
I invite you to join me in my search for the real truth. To ask yourself, what if everything we think we know about Jim Morrison is wrong?